Hi everyone, welcome to Mills Family Gardening. I'm Dina. Today is July 5th. We live in North Texas, Zone 8A. And today I'm thinking of planting some squash. Actually, in the last few years, I stopped growing squash completely because I never beat squash vine borers and also squash bugs. And so I thought there is no point in growing squash and I just stopped growing it. But this year, I did some research. I read a little bit about different types of squash, and there is Seminole pumpkin that I think is more resistant to squash vine borers, and that's what I'm going to try to plant this year. I also read that patty pan squash or zucchini type might also be resistant to squash vine borers, so I would like to try to grow it this year also. So I'm thinking about growing squash in this in-ground bed, and this is where we grew corn this spring and early summer. And honestly, it did not do well, so I'm going to improve the clay soil. For that, I'm going to put some mushroom compost, some llama manure, and also some fertilizer. Because llama manure is pellets and it takes time to break down in the ground, so it's not going to be feeding the squash right away. That's why I'm going to add some fertilizer in the soil. So first I'm going to remove all the mulch and some little plants there like dill and marigolds, and then I'm going to put all the compost and manure on top of it, and then I'm going to mix it with the soil. We've had an unusual heat and very little rain in the last few months, and I did water this patch in the last week, but in spite of that, the soil is still dry. It was a little difficult to dig, but I managed to dig some of it, about probably 5-6 inches, so that should be good enough. And so now I'm going to plant Seminole pumpkin that I got the seeds on Etsy, and also I'm going to plant yellow patty pan squash that I also got on Etsy. And the spacing for all these seeds is 3 feet. So we don't have so much room here, so I'll have to squeeze the seeds tighter, but hopefully that will be okay because I fertilized the ground pretty well. I'm going to start with Seminole pumpkin, and I'm going to plant the seeds 1 inch deep, and I'm going to plant them 3 feet apart. So I'll plant one batch of seeds here, and then one in the middle, and the last one at the very end of the patch. And then yellow patty pan squash seeds will go in between the Seminole pumpkin. Today is July 16th, and our squash and pumpkin seedlings have come up and they've grown a little bit and they're looking great, and now I need to thin them out. So I'm just going to look for the strongest looking and the biggest looking seedling. I think these both look about the same, so I'm just gonna remove either one of them. I'm gonna remove this one and leave this seedling in the ground. And now with these two seedlings, it seems like this one is doing much better. It looks bigger. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this one. So with the ones that I removed, I'm going to go ahead and put them back in the ground. They will break down straight in the ground and will provide food for the insects and bacteria. And what I've been doing, I've been just watering them every day. It's been extremely hot. We put up this shade cloth. It's 40% shade cloth. It's been helping some. And also about mid-afternoon, around 3 p.m., all these seedlings get afternoon shade, which benefits them. I also watered them once with liquid fish fertilizer, and they seem to be doing real well. It's been a month since we planted our squash and pumpkins, and they're looking great and growing well. And I can see that our patty pan squash started blooming. I noticed just yesterday the first blooms. I also noticed some baby patty pan squash on it. Hopefully I'll be able to harvest it before squash vine borers get them. And speaking of squash vine borers, I actually see a couple of them a few days ago. I tried to get the eggs as best as I could. Hopefully I got all of them. The Seminole pumpkins that have white spotted leaves are looking nice too, but they're not blooming, and I don't see any signs of blooming blooms just yet. I'm just assuming that they will take longer before they start blooming. This is our first time to grow them. Today is August 13th and our squash are doing great. They are blooming and actually they started producing some female flowers. And I'm just going to apply some more bloom. It's 1 tablespoon per gallon of water, and this is a 2-gallon watering can. So I'm just gonna go ahead and water every plant with this solution. And our Seminole pumpkins, which are these ones, they are doing great also. They just haven't started blooming yet, but I just recently saw little signs of little flowers. So hopefully soon we'll actually have some flowers on them. Today is August 15th and I see that the very first female flower opened up. You can see that it's sitting on a little penny pen squash itself. Originally I wanted to hand pollinate it, but I noticed a lot of honeybees flying around, so I think they're going to do a good job of pollinating the flowers. Today is August 20th and our squash and pumpkins are doing great. You can see that the Seminole pumpkin is actually taking over everything. It has not started producing flowers yet, but I see the first signs, so that's hopeful. And also our petty pan squash started producing female flowers, which means we're gonna have fruit soon. But I just wanted to quickly show y'all that our petty pan squash did not get pollinated in some parts. You can see those 2 dead female blooms that didn't get pollinated, and that happened because the heat was so bad, the pollen wasn't viable and the flower did not get pollinated. But you can see that this is the one that I actually hand pollinated, and it's growing and soon will be ready to be harvested. Here's another plant that has the petty pan squash pollinated, and you see that it's gotten so big that we need to harvest it. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and harvest it now. So I'm just gonna pick it up and twist it. Just like that. And here's our petty pan squash. You can see that behind the stem on the ground there is another one growing and got pollinated well, but it's still small, so I'm gonna let it grow more. Today is September 11th and we have our very first female flower on our Seminole pumpkins. And if you look closer, you can see that female flowers are sitting on a small fruit. This is a mini pumpkin that will grow into a big pumpkin eventually. And I'm going to hand pollinate it. We do have bees, but just to make sure that it actually pollinates, I'm going to just go ahead and get a male flower. So over here we have a male flower. You can see that a male flower is sitting just on a stem without any fruit on it. And so I'm just going to pick this male flower and I'm going to remove the petals. And I'll do it carefully because there are a lot of fire ants feeding on the nectar. And this is our male flower, and this part is anther and it's loaded with pollen. The female flower has this part is called stigma, and this is what we're going to pollinate. So I'm gonna put pollen from anther onto stigma very gently and carefully without breaking or hurting anything. I'm gonna put it all over to make sure that all of the stigma is covered in pollen. We'll wait a week and we'll come back and see if it actually grows into a pumpkin. Today is October 22nd. It's been almost 3 months since we planted our pumpkins, Seminole pumpkins, and they actually struggled through the summer because it was extremely hot, and you can see that a lot of vines have died. Like these vines, they don't look good. The leaves look yellow. But now that it's cooled down, we actually have some new growth. If you can see right there, the new bright green leaves are starting to grow. But they won't have time to produce fruit because the first freeze is coming in a couple of weeks and they won't have time to set fruit and grow pumpkins. In spite of the extreme heat, the 3 seeds that we planted at the end of July, they produced 7 pumpkins for us. And today we're going to harvest one of the pumpkins. Not all of them are ready to be harvested. Some of them still have some green patches on them. And a pumpkin is ready to be harvested when it's completely yellow or orange. In our case, Seminole pumpkins should be yellow or pale orange, like this one, for example. And this pumpkin is yellow all over except for this one spot that's slightly green. And the longer the pumpkin stays on the vine, the better will it be stored during the winter without it having to be refrigerated. I could probably leave this pumpkin on the vine for another week, but I can't wait to make pumpkin pie with it, so we're gonna go ahead and harvest it today. So I'm gonna remove it from the vine. And here is our pumpkin. The pumpkin is ready to be harvested and stored through the winter when its skin is completely yellow or orange and hard. So when I try to poke the skin with my fingernails, they don't make a hole in the skin. So this pumpkin is ready to be stored. So we're very excited that we got to grow petty pen squash and Seminole pumpkins this year without being defeated by squash vine borers. And we can't wait to make some pumpkin pie with it. We hope you enjoyed this video and it was helpful to you, and we'll see y'all in our next video. Bye-bye.